So there's a common issue I've noticed comes up a lot in Asian American discourse. Is the sense that they're not Asian enough for Asia and they're not American enough for America. So they always feel like they're somewhere in between. But today I would like to talk about my experience and how I've actually never really felt that way. I never had the issue of never feeling fully Vietnamese or never feeling fully American. But let me give you some background to that. So when I was 4 or 5 years old, I started going to Vietnam. I met my relatives there and I understood that these people were my family. These Vietnamese people living in Vietnam, that's my family. And they were really nice to me and they just accepted me. They never tried to other me. At the same time, with my mom in America, I had to speak Vietnamese. So that also solidified my Vietnamese identity. They kind of just trained you to feel Vietnamese. You know, for instance, we had this clock that was in the shape of Vietnam. I thought it was just so interesting because you could identify each major cities and you started learning these things about Vietnam as you're a little kid, and it just really solidifies that identity. But how about an American identity? Well, that I actually had to develop over time because first and foremost, I only felt Vietnamese as a little kid. But there were certain things that brought me to feeling more and more American. For instance, as a little kid, in elementary school, I really identified with my class. I identified with my elementary school, and at the same time, one of the things that made me feel the most American at that little age, I was doing the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. But there were other little things too in my elementary school life. For instance, watching my friend Martin and just feeling sad at that ending when Martin Luther King Jr. had to go back to the past to go live how things are for a better future for America.
Yeah, but there's something I didn't tell you. If you go back...
No, please don't tell me anymore. Am I right?
Right. No! Wait, please, Martin!
Like that felt, I don't know, it felt touching to me. Like you could feel Martin Luther King Jr.'s impact on my life because I understood that, oh, he's doing it for these races. And Martin Luther King Jr.'s acts kind of so brings us all together, makes us equal in a way. Learning about George Washington, learning about the presidents, learning that George Washington had wooden teeth or that Abraham Lincoln couldn't lie. Those things brought up, created this sense of feeling American. And I would say, I think starting about 8th grade was when that sense of Americanness just felt, I don't know, like fully there. Like I just felt fully American because one, I had a really great US history teacher, shout out to Miss Chin, but I remember being so interested in learning the preamble of the Declaration of Independence. I remember being really into the battles of the American Revolution and how just everything played out because I was like, we're on Team America. We want to get our independence from the British. Like there was something like, I don't know, something empowering about that. Like how did we do it? Like I understood like it's an American thing to fight off the British. I heard it ever since I was back in elementary school. And so by the time in middle school, I was really starting to learn like this is how we, emphasis on we as Americans did it. But there was one big kicker too that just solidified this feeling of Americanness in me, because in the Declaration of Independence they mentioned the pursuit of happiness, and that just spoke volumes to me because in middle school that was when I started skateboarding. And as a skateboarder, you just want to be out, you want to have fun, right? That's what you prioritize as a skateboarder. And so it was really silly of me, but I remember being grounded one day and sneaking out and going hanging out with my friends. And I got in super big trouble with my brother, and I was trying to argue against my older brother, saying, this is what makes me happy, I'm gonna pursue that. Because I had this kind of ingrained sense that, like, as an American, you gotta pursue happiness. Of course, I didn't really understand fully what that actually meant in the context of America and the history and all that. But all I knew is that as an American, that's my right to pursue happiness. And I used that as an argument point against my brother. Didn't really help me, but I felt that strongness. And I think that's where it really was feeling this sense of Americanness. And it was just solidified in 8th grade. However, I think the big thing about why I just felt fully American, but why other Asian Americans don't necessarily feel fully American, is because I think a big factor is that some of these Asian Americans, they only grow up in an area where they're the only one of their ethnicity. I grew up in San Jose, which is very Vietnamese and very Mexican, especially like the areas that I was in. And so no one treated me like I wasn't American enough because we were all kind of in the same boat. I mean, most of our parents were immigrants. So we were kind of just like kind of in this together almost, you know? There was nothing they could use against me for not being American enough. They couldn't say, oh, your parents just came here, you're not American enough. Our parents have been here for generations. No one did that because most of our parents were the immigrants that came here. But I'm sure it's super different for Asian Americans or whatever other ethnicity that just moved over and they're the only one of their ethnicity. And I can see how those certain dynamics would block them from feeling fully American. But as you get older, you start noticing differences, especially in society. And so when I started going to Vietnam around the age of 21, I noticed the differences between the Vietnamese over here and the Vietnamese over there. But for instance, with me, I noticed my Vietnamese was very accented.
You know Israel, mình cung điện của mình có 2 tầng luôn. Damn.
You know, people pointed it out and they could tell that I wasn't from there. But you know, I could still communicate with them, with the Vietnamese that I did know. So that kind of solidified my Vietnamese identity there. Other things too is just like we dress differently, the jokes are different. But at the same time, everyone was still really nice to me and they never othered me, at least not that I was aware of. You know, I've still made some really deep connections with the people there. And so that's why I just never felt like I wasn't Vietnamese. Most of my family is still there. And that's been a big part of it too, is just having family there, you know? You really feel the sense of connection there, especially when they're just so nice to you and you just feel like they'll do anything for you. It's really nice, you know? It's like you have I think that's one of the biggest things, just like you feel like you have a home all the way over there. And so that's why I just love going. And I go like every year as well. Essentially, all this to say is that I've always just felt fully Vietnamese and fully American. You know, I've been just lucky, privileged, whatever you want to call it, enough to just live in areas where I wasn't the only minority there. And I just had the privilege to go back to Vietnam a bunch and had the privilege of speaking Vietnamese with my mom and just the privilege of getting to know people who never othered me and just still accepted me for who I was and never tried to discriminate me against my nationality or my ethnicity. The reason I even put this out there too is because, well, like I know this is a common discourse in Asian America, is that, you know, Asian Americans don't feel Asian enough for Asia and they don't feel American enough for America. And I just want to put a viewpoint and experience out there of my own to show that I don't subscribe to that. You know, my experience, my Asian American experience was different. I always felt fully Asian and I always felt fully American. So that's who I am.